Hey everybody, this is Jason Alba with jibberjobber.com and Pluralsight Author, and today I have with me David Tucker out of Tennessee, right?
That's correct. Yeah, Chattanooga area.
Did you grow up in Tennessee?
So I did actually. I'm from this area originally. I moved away,
Hmm.
worked in a bunch of places up and down the East Coast, and came back.
That's weird because you don't have an accent.
That's what everybody says. I even have people here that will say, "No, where are you really from?" I'm like, "I promise, I'm from here."
Yeah, that's awesome. I've been to Tennessee a couple times, and in the United States, we have everybody stereotypes, right? But like, there's stereotyped places, and Tennessee certainly is stereotyped. You have like football
Yes.
and like big football
Oh yes.
and music, right? Nashville, and I can't think of anything else as good that as far as stereotypes go. But it is one of the most gorgeous states around. It's just really beautiful. So,
And one of my favorite pieces of trivia to bring up to people is, where's the fastest computer in the world? And they'll usually throw out, some universities here in China or whatever. No, it's
yeah.
in Oak Ridge in Tennessee, at Oak Ridge National Laboratories. And so again, that's just another way of, there's things people don't think of about Tennessee,
Oh,
that I
yeah.
always kind of like to try to educate people on when I can.
Yeah. One of the funnest parts about traveling anywhere is just opening your mind and getting beyond all the stereotypes. So, Tennessee's definitely on my list. I'd love to spend a month or two and just play around in the woods and stuff. David, tell us about your journey into technology. Like, when did this start? Are you one of those 7 year olds that was taking apart stuff or writing code, or like what's your journey been to technology?
Yeah, it's funny. I kind of was one of those 7 year olds that was really into computers, not necessarily taking things apart, but I had brothers and we had an Atari 2600, and we would actually go through and write these programs in BASIC. Because I remember
Wow.
and this is going to date me a little bit. I'm actually starting today, my last week in my 30s. So this is going to date me a slight bit. But I remember getting some magazines where I actually would have programs in the back that you'd have to like type out by hand. And you just hoped you didn't make a mistake along the
Oh
way.
yeah, one typo messed the
Right.
whole thing
Mess the
up.
whole thing up. You just sit there looking
I
page to
mean,
page.
one typo in programming, it always, could
Right.
be a mistake, but nothing was color coded or anything back then. And it
Exactly.
was just hard to find.
It
And it wasn't intuitive language. It was like gobbledygook, you
right.
know?
Right. So I started in BASIC, and we would write these little choose your own adventure games, where hey, you're in a room. Do you want to go left or right? And we write all the kind of the concepts around that. Now mine were very very simple at that age, but that really started me into it. But I didn't really pick things up a whole lot until about high school. And I remember we got a 486 computer at our house,
Ooh,
and this
that's a
was
big
was
deal.
huge. I had begged for it for forever. And I remember getting in, starting to learn HTML. And my first job outside of umpiring for little league games, which let me say was probably still to this day the most stressful job I've ever had. Um,
Yeah, parents, I'm
oh
guessing.
gosh, it was crazy. But outside of that, so in high school, I would go after high school and I would work in an internet service provider in town and actually do web design for some of their clients. Now, again, web design being dramatically different than what we have now.
Yeah,
But started in
yeah.
that, and then I went to college thinking I was going to be in music and I was going to be involved in, because again, obviously you mentioned music's big in Tennessee. I went to one of the top recording industry schools in the country, which is Middle
Wow.
Tennessee State, and thinking, hey, I'm going to go into this, and all the
So
time.
hold on. Do
Oh,
you
okay.
sing or play or pluck or
A
what's
little
your
bit of both.
musical?
If I actually switch
Okay.
over here to camera two, you can see the guitars on the
Oh,
wall.
nice.
Um,
That's awesome.
so they always stay close. But I'll be 100% honest with you. It quickly became evident to me that I am an average musician
Right.
at best,
Yeah.
but I had the ability to be a lot better at technology. And I think
Uh-huh.
that hit me because I realized in college, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I'm making good money doing this, like doing programming and stuff, because that was my side job during college. It's like maybe this should be my real thing, because I know a lot of people that graduate from the program I'm in that go and make coffee for people for 4 years before they get to do anything
If
important. So
if they ever get to do
if
anything.
they ever do it, yeah, I know one of my
Yeah.
classmates in the same program went to be an intern with a famous producer out in Los Angeles. She left the day after we graduated to go down there. 5 years later, she was still an intern wasn't getting
Yeah.
paid, and she decided, hey, that's not for me. And so those things kind of opened my eyes to be like, you know what, maybe I should really give a deeper look into technology.
Yeah. So your brothers were geeky too?
We all were, but it's funny, we all took different paths through it. So, my oldest brother now is it works at Bell Helicopters as a mechanical engineer. He's over their connected aircraft unit, so working with technology and helicopters together, which is
That's
super cool. I've
cool.
got another brother who went into kind of graphic design, and he's designed a lot of the albums for artists you would have heard of. Again, he's in Nashville, so out of there, he's done a ton of
That's
that work.
awesome.
And then I took it more the programming route.
Yeah. Yeah. Is that embarrassing when you have like Thanksgiving dinners? You got a helicopter, like someone who's doing amazing helicopter stuff, someone who's having conversations with like amazing people that everybody knows household names. And you're like, I just program. That's all I do.
Well, one of the things I think that's really cool about our dynamic with the three of us is we're all really interested in the work that the others are doing. And so it's really cool. We talk every week, and it's just fun to share those things. And so I don't think it's ever been awkward, but yeah, they certainly get to work on some really cool things. There's no doubt about that.
That's awesome. And you know what, though? I mean, you do too. So I'm not going to discount just a programmer at all, especially. I have a lot of respect for anybody who has a career in development. I remember years ago, a friend of mine was like, I was majoring in, I think, international business with a Spanish emphasis. And I was like, you know what? You go to school for this, and then you have a job for your whole career. And I don't know, I guess if you want to pick up some books, then you pick up some books, but how much Spanish are you going to learn, right? Like you need to be conversational and stuff. And a friend of mine was like, dude, you got to get into programming. It's so awesome. Like you get to learn stuff every day.
Yeah.
And I was like, that has no appeal to me. Like what I heard was you're going to be behind on your skill set every day. And I was like, no, not interested. So, hey, and you know what? Well, like Y2K brought out the COBOL programmers, right? Like there's always going to be a need for people who can create. And when I think about a developer today, I think about the engineers and the builders of Rome, back from many centuries ago. And that's what we are today, really, developers. I mean, I don't want to like give anybody a huge ego shot, but we're really constructing and crafting some amazing things. And some of these things really are changing how the world works and relationships and stuff like that.
100%. And it's such a unique time. And I think this is one of the challenges of being a developer, just as much as it's one of the pros of being a developer, is you have the ability to play a part in solving a problem for humanity. And you can choose what you do. And I mean, there's limitless opportunities, right? If you're somebody who just, maybe you're young and single and you just want to burn yourself out and work, you could find stuff to do 24 hours a day, stuff that's really impactful, that has the ability to impact society. But that also highlights, again, the challenge of figuring out what you want to do, figuring out how you're going to structure your life around it. And like you said, figuring out how you're going to work continual learning into what you do. Because if you don't include that, unless maybe you're just at a really big company where you can focus on one thing for your entire career, then you're going to have to continually work to stay on the leading edge of what's happening.
Yeah. Well, now I'm discouraged now. I don't want to do this anymore. No, it is cool though. I mean, it is cool to learn stuff, and it's cool to see how creative people are around the world. I think about what YouTube did for Justin Bieber, right? Justin Bieber was a kid plucking his guitar on, some steps out on a street, right? And then he was discovered because he threw up for free some videos of himself singing, right? And the same thing is applicable today. Like, I know that we talk a lot about privilege, or there's a lot of conversation about privilege. And if you're born in America and all these different things that'll give you privilege. I remember one time I was in Istanbul speaking. I didn't know anything about Turkey. Still don't know much about Turkey, honestly. I met some really cool, nice people in Turkey. But anyways, I was speaking all day, and this guy came up to me and he said, hey, tomorrow morning we have this monthly meeting where a few business leaders get together, like technologists get together, and we just kind of chat about what we're seeing and what opportunities and what we're going after and how we can help one another. And we'd love to have you come out and have breakfast with us and be in this conversation. I thought, yeah, okay, that's cool. So I went, and I was in the most intense group of technologists that I've ever been in. And I sat there thinking, I'm going to get on a plane and fly back to the US where we're worried about, our reality shows or the next episode of this or binge watching that. And and we're kind of waiting for permission to go accomplish something great, right? We're waiting for a title, or we're waiting for a company name that we can associate ourselves with. And here was this group in Turkey, and I know there were probably hundreds or thousands more in the same area who all they needed was an internet connection and a laptop. And it didn't even need to be the newest laptop. It could be a regular old, like what we would consider like old and junky, and I'm ready to upgrade, right? And so what technology has done to give opportunities to someone who's creative and is going to put the work in. That's it. Like you don't have to be brilliant. You don't have to be high IQ, but you've got to be ready to put work in and follow some kind of passion. And that's just so beautiful what it's allowed us. And so going back to what you said about continuous learning, with resources like Pluralsight, over 7,000 courses. Are you kidding me? Like you cannot watch half of those courses in your life. Really, you're probably, I bet most people that are really serious about it are going to watch seriously like 1 or 2, maybe 5% of the courses over the course of their life. The thing is, how do we take this opportunity of this education? And I'll tell you what, man, I got an undergraduate degree in business, computer information systems. I have an MBA. Those, I felt like they were very cookie cutter classes. I could have got the same thing from reading books that were 20 years old, right? And the ability that we have to go right now to Pluralsight or YouTube or just read a blog post and pick something up and then follow our ideas and create something, that's an opportunity that pretty much everybody on this planet has.
Right, absolutely. And this has, it's changed so much because of that. Like you said, I've also had a chance to go around to a lot of different places in the world, and you come across people that are just diving in. They're finding resources. I even have people on LinkedIn and Twitter that reach out to me that are taking my courses on Pluralsight. And this is for them a life-changing experience, because all of a sudden they're going to get a set of skills that either enables them to start their own business that fundamentally changes something where they're from,
get a promotion.
A promotion. They get a chance to maybe get on with an international consulting company and really dive in and do impactful work. And again, I'm not saying that things are equal for everybody, but the ability for people to just pick somewhere and dive in and learn it, that is what I think ever since the beginning of my career has most excited me about technology. Even back then, and things are so much better now, there is no limit on what you can learn other than your time. And so if you pick something that you want to dive into, you can do it. So funny story about my career. I was sitting in a coffee shop in Crofton, Maryland. This was after I got out of college. And at the time, I had done some work. I initially started off doing some web development. It was in PHP. I'd started doing a little bit in Cold Fusion. And I remember I was sitting in a coffee shop. I was reading a book on PHP and MySQL. And a guy came up and he said, "Do you know anything about Adobe Flex?" And at the time, I was like, no, I had heard of it, but at the time it was crazy expensive. Like companies had to shell out like $100,000.
Prohibitive.
Right. And so I said, no, I'm not going to do anything with that. You'd have to be a pretty experienced developer working at a big company. He said, yesterday they just announced this new version of it, and it's basically free for companies to use however they want. And I thought, oh, wow, interesting. So I remember going back. He said, you take a look at it, and then he said, call me back in like a couple of days because I've got some work if you want to do it in this. So I spent days and days and days researching Adobe Flex. I called this guy back. Never heard back from him. Like, I have no idea what happened to him. But that one conversation started a journey in really what would become a very, very pivotal part of my career. Really, that where I transitioned from just being like a little freelance developer who would do things here and there to being the kind of developer that would get to go up and build, some of the cutting edge technology that would be used. For example, during that phase of my career was when I actually built the system with FedEx that actually ended up transporting the COVID vaccine and being able to monitor temperature.
Wow.
Control in real time. One of the really early IoT implementations was because of my experience in that technology, which again, you can trace back to that one conversation that I had with a random guy that I never talked to again in a coffee shop.
Yeah, that's awesome. You're making me think about, I kind of touched on this a little earlier, but people, I feel like we sit around a lot waiting for two things. We wait for ideas. And man, I came out with a product almost 2 years ago because I was at a conference. Somebody came to my booth and said some stuff to me, and it got me thinking. I never had this idea before, but just his comments made me think, there's got to be a better way, right? That's how it starts, right? And then I spoke the next day on something that was enough related to it that the idea that was triggered from his comments became a big part of my presentation. And when I ended my presentation, I said, now everybody in this room should do this thing. Everybody should do this. It's so easy to create this product. And I don't care if you're all competitors with each other, go do it, right? Well, guess what? I got on the plane and I was like, wait, I was in the room. I'm part of the everybody. Why don't I do it?
Yep.
And I did. I came up with it, right? And so ideas, and then permission. And we sit around, like I said, we're waiting for a title or a company name. We're waiting for something to validate that we actually can do it. A lot of times that's permission. And as an entrepreneur, to anybody who ever watches this, I'll tell you right now, I'll give you permission. And that doesn't mean anything, but it's as significant as any other bit of permission that you'll ever get. So with moving permission out of your brain, waiting for that, all we're talking about is like, how do we come up with these ideas? And I love your story because you can come up with ideas on your own, but man, if you're just paying attention to the conversations around you, whether it's virtual, whether you're in on them, whether you're overhearing somebody at a coffee shop, whether somebody comes and says something to you, that can, like you said, it changed the trajectory of your career, right?
Yep.
I mean, these are career-changing concepts.
And one of the things I love about technology, because sometimes people get into a field and they feel like, I'll never be one of those top people.
Yeah,
and
right.
And they've got these people that they follow.
10X.
Right. Maybe they're, maybe they're looking at people like Pluralsight authors, or maybe they're looking at people on Twitter or people that write on DevTo or wherever, and they say, I can't be one of those people. But here's the great thing about technology. Technology is always cyclical. So if you can pick, and this was, to be honest, this is the map I did for my career. If you pick not what is the current technology, if you pick what's the next one and you start working on that, you have the ability to be one of those people. Not today.
Wow, that's cool. I like
that. You have the ability to get there. And I think this for me was accelerated because I spent 10 years of my career in consulting with a company called Universal Mind. And it was one of the best experiences, worked with some of the best people I've ever worked with. But working in consulting is that continual task of, we have to figure out how to be good at the next thing, because the current thing is starting to move in-house, or it's starting to become commoditized. And so you're not going to be able to make as much money off that as a consulting company. So you have to always be looking to the next big thing. But I think even if you're just an individual developer, like if I were a developer now, man, I'd be diving in and looking at things like Rust, for example, which is just continuing to grow and expand. And there's so much interest there, as opposed to saying, hey, I want to become the best React developer. There's nothing wrong with that. React's still going to be popular, but there's other emerging technologies that might enable you to push further into it than with these established technologies.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm getting so many ideas from this conversation. So you talked about like being successful as a consultant. Part of understanding those next technologies is a lot of your soft skills, right? So being able to analyze and think through and kind of try and figure out how to see over the horizon and think strategically, but also you have to be an excellent listener and communicator. You have to listen to all of the little conversations that are going on, so you can really weigh them, like determine what's valid and what's not, right? As you're evaluating this new technology. But then when you're selling yourself, or you're in a consulting, you've already sold and you're in the consulting situation, you have to be able to communicate ideas in a way that, you've just spent 100 hours researching and thinking about and stuff like that. And you have this one opportunity to get in front of some people, and you have like 30 to 60 minutes to really communicate concisely and precisely and get them bought into it, right? So I'm kind of a nut for soft skills.
Well, let me just say here, because this is a great point you bring up. I think, I don't want to put a score on how good of a developer I am. I think I'm decent. I think I'm pretty good in a lot of areas, but I've known people that are better than me. But I'll tell you, the thing that differentiated my career, in my opinion, and this was partly because this was something I was interested in, was I had the ability to go in front of people that were non-technical and help them understand technology and technical strategy in a way that made sense to them. And that gave me opportunities to speak in front of, a lot of companies. I spoke at a lot of conferences. I had a chance to, to really speak into a lot of concepts at these companies and the tools they were building. And to me, that just opened more doors than if I were the best developer the world has seen. Now, that being said, I know people who they don't have those skills and they don't want those skills, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, I agree.
You need to understand where you fit based on that. So you might not want to, if you don't have those skills, you might not want to end up at a consulting company, or at least not being maybe a front-end architect where you're talking with clients. You might want to go to a product company where you can just work on your one area and really dive into that and make a huge difference. There's different areas for everybody, but I agree with you. I don't think anybody's career is hurt by working to maximize your ability to communicate. Written communication, actually being able to speak in front of people, really thinking through that. And consulting is a crash course in that, because I can't tell you how many times I'd get to a hotel at, maybe 10 p.m. at night, and I'd have a meeting at 9 a.m. the next morning, and I've got to really figure out within just a couple of hours how to really consolidate what I'm going to say into a way it's going to be received well. And so you do that enough, it's just enough practice to really help you get good at it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the points I want to make, piggybacking on what you just said. I'm looking at you, and you're very polished, and you've had this amazing career, and you're a Pluralsight author, and you were a consultant for 10 years and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, I can never, I don't even see that in my future. Like, I don't see how I could actually get to that level. But what we're talking about with these soft skills is all about practice.
Right.
And you get to practice with your neighbors. You get to practice with your family. You get to practice with, when you're on customer support for whatever company, like you get to practice these skills with everybody. And as you practice them and get better at them, that will bleed over into your professional life and opportunities and stuff like that. I'm thinking about an organization I worked at where, there was some techies who were amazing, like architect, amazing level. The buck stopped with them. If they said no, it would die, right?
Right.
But they had zero communication skills, and you could tell they didn't even care about you. They didn't want to talk to you. They didn't care about you. They were great at what they did, so they found where they fit, and that's perfectly fine. The people that I found, the technologists that I found that I would gravitate towards when I had problems, issues, questions, anything work related, those were the ones who I was confident that I wasn't going to get my head bit off, right? Because they had some of those soft skills. So I agree that, figure out where you want to fit, but there are some opportunities that you can have when you're approachable and when you're nice and when you can communicate and when you have empathy and, some of that stuff.
100%. I've run across some people in this space that are very kind, and I've run across some people that aren't. I'm just going to be upfront. Like, even if from a morality perspective, you don't feel like you need to be kind or whatever, there are simply career benefits to being the person that is kind.
Yeah.
Right. I still have people that reach out to me that I used to work with at one of the different roles, whether it was when I was at Georgia Tech or Universal Mind or any of those other places I worked at. They'll come back to me because I was just the guy, hey, and they've come to me with consulting opportunities. They've come to me with opportunities to join other companies and all those kind of things. It just opens doors when you're the kind of person that helps when you can, when you're the kind of person that's going to, speak a kind word, maybe even when it's not warranted, if somebody else has done something problematic, it makes a difference. And I know some people probably doubt that. Trust me, it makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Hey, let's switch gears over to the cloud. So you've seen the cloud. Like, were you interested in the cloud from day one when you first heard about it, or did it kind of grow on you? Tell me about your experience with this
Yeah, I mean, I
technology.
think I really was interested from the beginning. I remember, so I was working before Universal Mind. I was working at Georgia Tech as a developer, and I would also help with research projects. And I remember the first time I really started messing around with virtualization. So this was even pre like cloud platforms that were out there. But I remember I was using VMware Desktop, I think was the name of the piece of software. And I remember I could spin up all these servers on my computer and I could interact with them as separate servers. And I remember something just kind of hit in my mind, like, man, the possibilities with this are near limitless. And I've always been the kind of person, when I'm thinking about developing something, I'm pretty good at piecing things together. And I was sitting here thinking, as the cloud started to emerge, I was like, man, if I don't have to build this and I don't have to build that, I can build more. Like, I can go really fast.
It frees you up on so many
Absolutely.
areas, and it allows you to specialize. I mean, when I was first developing, I kind of had to do a lot of stuff. There wasn't
Right.
like, there was DevOps, but not like there is today,
Yeah.
I QA'd almost, I don't think I had anything go through QA when I first started developing. Like, I
Right.
was the QA.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and I knew that if I didn't do a good job, then I was going to have a conversation with the customer and my boss. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Exactly.
And now it's like you can specialize in these silos because there are other, experts that will fill in all those gaps. And so anyways, yeah, I agree. Like, watching the cloud take care, like, check off, done, 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 go focus on what you should focus on. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that for me, I always saw it as a plus. I understand other developers see this as a negative thing, because there's a tendency as a developer to want to own everything, right? Because if you
Yeah.
own everything and you control everything, you feel like there's less that's out of your control. And again, I get that. I've been called
Yep.
at
Me
2
too.
a.m. on a Friday night because something crashed, and I get it. But at some point, it's realizing, like, I can actually do more by letting some things go. And so as I started to see this emerge, and I'll give you a quick anecdote for this. So one of my first server experiences before the cloud was when I was working at actually my university. And when I was in college, and I bought a server, set up a website on it. I worked at a group that was associated with the history department, and they were trying to put some research online. I did that for them, got it up. Oh, this is great. And it was like the second week of December. So I go home for Christmas break, and I get an email from a random like research institute in the Northeast, and they're like, "Your server is trying to hack our server." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, I probably should know something about security. I didn't really at the time, so. And so I drove 2.5 hours to go pull
Couldn't
the
you have just
plug out of
called your
that server.
security person?
At this
Yeah,
point,
right.
yeah,
There was
exactly. Like, and
none.
at this point, like, the server was sitting in my office. I was the only one that had the ability to do it. So I drove 2.5 hours simply to pull the plug out of the back of that server and then drive back home for the rest of Christmas break. And then I fixed it and got things up and running and started learning some things about security
Yeah.
that when I got back from Christmas break. But part of that, I look now at the cloud and I think about the barrier of entry. Like, if you're a new developer and you want to stand up a site, you want to follow security best practices, the ability to use some of these platform as a service solutions, like, the barrier for entry is so much lower than it was when I got started. Now, there's some advantages to the way that, I got started back in the day, because you just got dropped in, the middle of something and you had to figure your way out, and there was no one really to
Yep.
call to help you.
There weren't a
But
whole lot of websites, or I mean,
right.
there were books. There were books.
Yeah, there were books, but there wasn't Stack Overflow, right? There wasn't,
Yep.
these places you could go to. There weren't these. You had some chat rooms occasionally with IRC and other things, but there weren't great resources, and so you had to figure it out. But the truth is a lot of times that led to you maybe learning things the wrong way or not the best way. And now
Hmm.
with this, you can get to the point where you can actually put something out of value, having to have a lot less skills than you had to back in the day.
That's kind of cool and scary at the same time, right?
It is, yeah, and
You,
sorry, go
I
ahead.
don't think you need to have the hard skills, but you need to have the aptitude and interest in learning. Going back to learning, You don't have to know everything right now. And on Twitter, there's a lot of jokes about like, people think I'm a great programmer, but I'm really just really good at Googling, right?
Yep.
I mean, we don't have to know everything. But we have to ask. We have to know how to ask questions. We have to be curious. Two of my favorite C words are curiosity and creativity. Those make for an excellent developer, right?
Yep.
So,
and it's funny you say that about Googling. I mean, once I shifted over from being a day-to-day developer um, to being a manager and actually leading a group. By the time I left Universal Mind, I was over the whole technical side of the consultancy, and I interviewed a lot of people. And one of the things I was always interested in, and more so than, hey, do you know exactly how to do, blah, 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 whatever that is? Can you create a linked list with your eyes closed on a whiteboard? That's not what I'm interested in. I'm actually interested in, tell me how you find answers when you don't know something. Because truth be told, developers are going to spend more time doing that than they are simply reciting something that they've memorized. And to me, that was a very telling thing. I mean, your ability to fine tune how you find stuff on Google is just as important as learning how to fine tune your IDE for your development process. And I think that's something that some developers think, oh my goodness, I'm looking something up in Google, I really don't know it yet.
yeah.
And I'm telling you, like, I forget stuff all the time. And
Yep.
so especially when I go back and forth between different
Hey, wait till next week when you're 40.
Exactly.
A flip.
Exactly.
A flip's gonna switch.
Yeah. And so I'm always looking up stuff. I'm always, even some things that maybe I used to know or some things I haven't figured out yet. I'm just going and trying to figure it out. So that's an important skill.
I think that new devs or new technologists, no matter what field you're in, need to understand that if they need to go check out Google, it's okay. Like, because everybody does it. I remember I was I think it was a security class in college, and somebody came in and bragged on the professor. They're like, "Oh man, this guy Corey Scow, Corey has forgotten more about security than you'll ever know to us," right? And I was like, I don't even know what that means. It sounds kind of cliche. It sounds, I don't know how to take that. And now I'm like, it's interesting at my stage of my career. I'm almost 50, which is super weird to say, but I'm 47. That sounds a lot better than almost 50. But I've gone back 20 years ago when I was really deep into technology and thinking about the stuff I built and created and stuff I've learned. And I was like, I really have forgotten a ton. I really have forgotten a ton. And it's okay, right? Especially because technology changes so much that if you forget something old, then okay, well, whatever. But what we shouldn't be forgetting is, the principles. You can carry principles of design and development and architecture and all that stuff into whatever environment or language or whatever. It's the principles that we need to get expert at.
Absolutely. And this is something for developers. I think that you really don't get to this until you get to about your second or third technology, is you begin to understand how principles actually supersede whatever language or platform you're working in.
Yeah.
And I think that does two things. One is that helps you better understand what's critical in what you're building. And the other thing is it also helps you abstract the technologies that you're working in so that when you move on to something new, you're like, oh, okay, I know how to do this in this language now. I know how to do this. And that's just like doing it, this other thing in this other language.
And I can learn this because I got the foundation. The principles are the foundation.
Absolutely. Now, there's a couple things I think that are essential for any developer to do. So in addition to all the stuff we've talked about so far, one of them is I think developers need to pick something, a product, a solution, just a demo of some sort that they are going to build and own themselves from beginning to end. Meaning that you're going to, let's say it's a web application or a mobile app, because I think for most people, that's kind of what it would be. You're going to go in and you're going to...
Because of the barriers to entry, right? Like it's pretty easy to spin something up.
Correct.
And inexpensive.
That, it's also pretty easy to use, right? In the sense of, maybe you think, hey, if I had this one little thing that we can use, maybe at this group I volunteer in, or if there's one thing that I can use to track this one thing, and web and mobile just becomes kind of a natural jumping off point for that. But it forces you to say, I'm going to do everything, and I'm going to figure out what I need to know to do the front end, to do the back end, to figure out how to store data, to figure out how to spin it up in the cloud. Like that just doesn't have to be something that you have to make this huge, robust thing, but being able to push through enough to learn how to apply those principles, even some that aren't your area of expertise. And this was one of the things I would constantly tell the people that worked for me was you need to have this. Like, I know you might think you're just an iOS developer, but we know that technologies change and adjust and shift over time. Your ability to build something complete from beginning to end will be a differentiator in your career.
Absolutely.
Show that you can apply those.
I totally agree. I'll give you my anecdote on that. I was in a programming class in college and I was doing well. I mean, I enjoyed it. I got it. And my wife left for a week to go on a camp out or something. I don't remember, but I was home alone for a week. And I was like, all right, I'm going to build this app because I'm getting an A in my programming class. Right. So I go into my little office and I turn my computer on because that's what you did in the olden days with those 486s, right? Like you turned them on and off regularly, right? I turned my computer on. I waited for like 10 minutes or however long it takes to boot up. And I'm staring at the screen and I'm like, I don't know how to start. I can write functions. I can write code. I can write pseudocode. I can design my database. I don't know how to start. Yeah. And I didn't do it because I couldn't figure out how to start. People come to me and they're like, how do you become an entrepreneur? Like what classes or courses or whatever? And I'm like, go sell something.
Yes.
The way you can go read books and you can go to classes. I hired a guy out of an entrepreneur program once, coincidentally. I didn't hire him because he graduated from an entrepreneur program. He was the least entrepreneurial person I've ever met in my whole life, right? He's a perfect government worker. No offense to government workers. Right. But he didn't have an entrepreneurial ounce in his whole body. But if you want to learn how to do the stuff, which is figure out product and pricing and delivery and customer service and competition and inventory and all that stuff, you do it. Yeah. You do it. And so I love your advice. I haven't really thought about that way, but it's a perfect parallel to what I tell people about being an entrepreneur. If you want to be a developer, go own a product. And once again, me and David is going to give you permission to do this. That's all you need is your permission. You already have your ideas. Go create a product.
And again, this is where I think you can't let this, imposter syndrome or, there's different aspects of this, but you can't let that come in at that point where you say, well, I can't do this or it won't be as good as this. The truth is, one of the things you learn about being in this space for a while is 90% of the people don't try, right? They don't go beyond, oh, I feel uncomfortable about this. If you're the person who tries, and you can go listen to all of these entrepreneur stories, go listen to like How I Built This or any of those podcasts.
I love that podcast.
So good.
I've heard every single one of them.
Me too. But you listen to that and you learn that the ones that succeed are the ones who try. And the other great thing that I try to encourage developers with is, listen, you're in a field where there's a lot less risk than most. You can probably find a job somewhere. Yeah. So take the opportunity you have now. Maybe you're doing this as a side hustle. Maybe you're doing this as your full-time gig. Totally fine. Give yourself a window. And I'm a huge believer in time boxes. This is a whole other thing, but I'm a huge believer in time boxes. Give yourself a window to create something. Work to get it in place. Be product owner, developer, salesman, like do all of those roles. Wear all those hats. Get it done, and you're going to have something that you're going to be proud about at the end of the day. Now, is it going to be the greatest thing in that space ever?
Probably not.
Probably
might be
not if it's your first one.
Facebook wasn't amazing at the beginning.
Exactly. But the success is not in doing it perfect the first time. The success is in putting something out, getting feedback, and iterating. That's where ultimately products become successful.
Well, and you haven't really been talking about creating a successful product, and this is what I've been hearing, as much as kind of building a skill set and reinforcing. But wait, before we go there, I got to say this is not sponsored by How I Built This, but I just happen to have this book. A friend gifted this to me. I love this. This seriously is my number one favorite podcast. I'm not a huge podcast guy. I have a hard time podcasting while I'm at work, but when I commuted, this was the only thing I would listen to. And I tried a few others and I was like, can't do it. But this is stories of startup people. Man, it's awesome. So I'm glad you mentioned that. Anyways, so let's go back to cloud stuff and Pluralsight. So you're a Pluralsight author. You've authored for a bunch of places. You had some Lynda. I don't know how many Lynda courses.
I did a few with lynda.com. I had a chance to do some stuff with O'Reilly, both writing, and then I did some blog work for them. I did some content creation stuff for Adobe, actually some of their official courses. And I've had a chance to do some stuff for Egghead.io, which
Adobe, is and that came out of that Starbucks conversation, right?
Absolutely.
Isn't that so cool?
100% that came out of that.
So cool.
And some of those things too, it's crazy. That time in my career, it was just all about, hey, I went to a conference. People knew some of the stuff I did, made connections. And from one conference, I had about 10 different opportunities, including the ability to blog for Adobe regularly, create some of their courses they would travel around and do. It was just a great time. And that was a great community around that technology at the time. Obviously, we've kind of moved past that technology now, but
I want to dive into that real quick.
Sure.
Because people think about becoming conference speakers or bloggers or whatever. And I think a lot of times people look at themselves and they're like, once again, I'm not David. Like, he has so many years and his breadth and depth of experience, and he's done all these things. But the thing that people don't remember is that you started somewhere, right? And I don't know about you, but when I get up on stage, I'm pretty nervous the first time until I get my first laugh. Like, I need a laugh and then I'm good to go for the rest of the time. But if I'm covering something new, which I regularly do, I'm nervous, right?
Yeah.
And so I know people are afraid, I guess that's the right word, to like think of themselves of being up on that stage. But I would just encourage you, if you have the opportunity, go practice. Like, study up on your stuff, get real good at it, take some real ownership. Maybe that means you lock yourself in a room for a few days and really dive into the technology to understand things. But the people who are on stage now that look very polished and amazing that you look up to, are the people who have their names on books. They started somewhere, right? And so I would like to encourage people to just kind of get over this mental hump of, I'm not there yet, and I'm not sure if I'll ever be there. Because I'm guessing for you too, this has been a really rewarding part of my career. It's a lot of fun. Like, traveling is fun. It can get old, but it's fun to get out there. It's fun to meet and rub shoulders with other speakers. It's fun to meet people in the audience that are doing amazing things at amazing companies, and to think that we're really, like, it's not me up there preaching to you, but we're just having a conversation and I'm sharing some ideas. And like, I tell people about my Pluralsight course, I say, my dream is not that you agree with everything or even a lot of what I say. My dream is that your team watches this course and then sits down for a couple hours and beats it up and says, well, this is why it won't work in our situation, but here's some ideas of how we can make things better. Right? That's what I want as a speaker.
Yep. Totally. And I would just, let me tell this story, because I think hopefully this might help some people get over some of the hurdles. So I was at Georgia Tech. This was not too long for me after college. And I was learning Adobe Flex, again, going back to this technology early in my career. And there was this framework out there, and there just weren't good learning resources. And again, did I know this framework? No. But the reason I started thinking, you know what? I bet if I just put together some of my thoughts on it, maybe it'll help one or two other people that are in here learning what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So with permission from my employer, I took like an hour at the end of each day over the course of a week, and I ended up recording like this 5-video series. And again, this was back before I had done any of the things I had mentioned, right? This was, no one knew me from anyone. And I put this out on my blog. And I was blown away by the response. To this day, I don't have exact numbers. I bet this is watched more than any course I have on Pluralsight, because there was a need for it. And I had identified it and just put some stuff out there. Now, if I go back and watch those videos, I have them on a hard drive somewhere. They are horrible in terms of like all the things I've learned now, in terms of like instructional design, in terms of how I put things together. but it was a need. And here was one of the great things. You can teach people the best when you're as close to that learner experience as possible. So when you take, probably both yourself and myself, like now sometimes we have to work to put ourselves back in that learner position.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're learning something and you see there's not other resources out there, just put it out. See what happens.
Yep.
It doesn't have to be the most polished, phenomenal thing out there. You just being able to give insights to other learners could open up a whole new section of your career. And to be honest, it's probably going to help a lot of people get over a hump in their career to get to the next step.
Yep. I love it. I love it. And you could do that through a YouTube series, which is free. You could do it on your blog, which is free. You could do it in LinkedIn articles, which is free. Like there's so many, and it's so easy. Here's my favorite way to tell people to do this. And this is a personal branding play. When I talk about when I talk with people who are going through a career shift, right? Like they're changing industries or they're changing roles. And I say, look, what I want to know is that you have passion and interest in this area. And one of the best ways to do that is as you learn something, I'm a blogger by trade since 2006. The video stuff didn't start until like 2012. But so my first thing is go write a blog post on this. And your message is, your perspective is, hey, I just learned this amazing thing. And here's why it's amazing. And here's how it works. And here's what I've learned. I still have more to learn.
Right.
But I just wanted to share this with you and come along on my learning journey. Now, what that does, like you said, it helps other people. It can open doors, but it also creates a brand of yours where you're passionate about learning, you're passionate about sharing and mentoring and teaching. And if I'm looking for someone that's interested in a certain technology and I can read your passion and interest in that technology, I'm a lot more interested than, a generic resume that I just saw.
Absolutely. I am a huge proponent of that because everything we've talked about, so creating that sample project from beginning to end, putting some learning content online, either in video form or in blog or all that, this is all stuff that you can then immediately turn around and use as a part of your pitch to whatever employer you want to go work for. It has double value. And this is one of the things I think that's so critical in your career is figure out ways to use things in multiple ways. So you're not having to recreate the wheel every time. So
that sounds like a developer mindset right there. Right?
Exactly. Don't repeat yourself. DRY. Yeah. It's you take time putting together your LinkedIn profile, use that in your resume, right? You build in these projects, you include links in your resume. Like bring all this together and think of, and again, and you're going to have a lot more advice for people on this than I am, but use all of this, like you said, to help build your personal brand so that when you're going out there, you're not just this brand new unknown commodity for these other companies to look at. No, you're a person. They can see you're passionate about something. They can see the value that you can bring to their company through what you've posted. Because again, that's how to be honest, that's how I progressed. The reason I got on at Universal Mind, and I got on as a low-level developer and eventually was able to work my way up, but the reason I got on was because they saw those training videos. They wanted me. They saw me at a conference. They approached me. And one of the funny stories about this is they forgot to do my technical interview. They thought it had already been done. I never had a technical interview
That's awesome.
before I joined with them. And there was a ton I didn't know. Again,
that's awesome.
I'm going to embarrass myself.
You might not have passed it. Is that what you're saying?
It's very possible that I would not have passed it because even though I was a developer, like there were so many things, like even like advanced source controls, like I'd never done any of that. So my first year at that company, we were building amazing software. I would spend 40 to 50 hours working on my project, and then I would spend another 10 to 12 hours learning all the stuff I should have learned before I even started.
Yeah.
And did that for probably the first 6 to 12 months I was there. But to me that was okay. It's like, I'll get there. I can figure this out.
Yep.
And it's just having
your brand preceded you. Your brand preceded you. They already saw your chops, right? They saw your technical skills. No, so I wrote this book. This is the second edition, but this is my first book. This is kind of what launched everything. This lady calls me up and she says, "We got your book on Amazon. We love it. And we need you to come speak at our conference." And that launched my professional speaking career. They offered me they offered me $5,000 plus they paid for me to go out in a hotel to sit on a panel. And I was like, wait a minute, what? what kind of money is in this conference speaking thing? And I didn't want to be a speaker, but $5,000 changed my mind pretty easily.
Absolutely.
So I go in to write the second edition, and I thought I was going to make a few changes. I made about 500 changes.
Yep.
My book sucked. My title was great. I'm on LinkedIn now, what, right? But the book really did suck, right? Going back to your videos, you said as you look at them now, it's like, man, that was kind of really horrible and embarrassing. But they were good enough to propel you to that next place. Let's talk in the last few minutes that we have. I want to hear your journey to Pluralsight. I want to hear like how it started and, whatever you want to share about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I found myself back in 2018. So I transitioned away from Universal Mind. I made the decision I wanted to kind of go out on my own and do my own thing. And I knew it was consulting in the beginning was going to be a big part of it. The consulting is a bit of a double-edged sword, right? You generally can make decent money consulting, but you're always fixed to where you have to work an hour to make your hourly rate. And so there's not the ability to really have that kind of recurring revenue, even if you have some longer term contracts. And again, there's some theory in how you can go about that, but that was kind of the situation I found myself in. I had, instead of going out and creating content like I had done before with O'Reilly and lynda.com and others, I had basically spent all those years in consulting. Like I would create some similar types of content, but it would be for our clients. So there was nothing public facing that was out there that was recent, because that was a big part of what I did. I kind of became the architect that would help explain all these concepts to clients and help lead them into new technologies and the like. So I found myself here going, you know what? I really want to get back into this space. I want to do more. And I had a chance to try out with one company, which was actually founded by another member of Universal Mind, which is a training provider. And it was a good experience, but I was worried that they didn't have the eyeballs for what I wanted to talk about, which was really around the cloud and the developer-focused cloud. And with that, I started looking around and said, you know what? Pluralsight, I think, is going to be what I want to do, because even looking at some of the other providers out there, and again, I'm purposely not mentioning some of the names right now. Some of them were kind of hot and up and coming, and it looked great, but their focus on quality was I mean, to me, it wasn't there. Because if you remember, part of my background is audio recording. And so I care a lot about audio and video quality, how that factors into my courses. Again, when I started off, I was horrible. Let me just go ahead and say that. But I got better over time at those things. I wanted somewhere that reflected the content I wanted to do and and that quality that I wanted to have. I wanted to be proud of what was out there and proud of the whole library of wherever I was going to be, really positioning myself at. So luckily for me, one of the former UX directors at Universal Mind became a UX director at Pluralsight. And so we kind of started this conversation. And before this, and this is kind of another, using the tips we mentioned earlier here in this talk, I had put out a couple of live stream videos that I did on Twitch and then posted segments of those onto YouTube. Again, totally for free. And what I did with those was I wanted to have those be kind of my showpiece of, hey, here's what I can do now. Because I didn't have a ton of recent stuff because, again, I'd spent so much time doing kind of behind the firewall work for a lot of our clients. And so I pushed this out there and quickly was able to kind of work through the process at Pluralsight. And I was just extreme. This is a part of it that was lucky. I was able to jump into Pluralsight. They had already given out a bunch of AWS courses to existing authors, and they were looking for somebody to take on this new entry-level certification for AWS, which is called the Cloud Practitioner Certification, which to this day is still my most viewed content on Pluralsight. And so I was able to jump in and start creating content, and I think now I've created 29 pieces of content, but I'm actually working on 11 pieces of content right now. Don't want to dive too much into that. There's some cool stuff coming, especially if you're interested.
That's a lot of work. I'm just going to say right now, if people don't know, I mean, you look at an hour and a half or an hour a minute course, it is a lot of work. Are you talking about the course that's Fundamental Cloud Concepts for AWS?
Correct. So when we started off, the first version of this was actually just one course for that whole certification. there was so much interest in it, and a lot of Pluralsight's clients said, you know what, we just want more of this. We want more. And so we actually took and retired that original course, and we made it into 3 courses, and now it's actually expanded out into 4, and this is in that AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner path. And this is great even for people that just want to learn more about the cloud and what it is, because you've got fundamental cloud concepts of AWS, you have understanding AWS core services, and then an introduction to security and architecture on AWS. Those 3 courses really, even if you have zero interest in the certification, will help you understand more about this entire platform space on AWS and what it can do for you.
It's a foundational stuff that everybody needs to know about, so that they can understand how cloud, and specifically AWS, but you're talking about principles anyways, right? So you take your principles to any cloud environment.
Absolutely.
Man, that's awesome. So you started in 2018 then?
Correct. I started, I think I didn't start until 2019. I was really busy with consulting from 2018 to 2019. I started in May of 2019, and then I've been creating content on Pluralsight ever since. So almost 2 years now.
That's awesome. And you're full-time? Are you full-time, or do you still consult?
I'm like 90% time on Pluralsight, and I still have some consulting engagements. I do some work with a couple of startup accelerators on providing some technical strategy consulting for some of their companies, a few other random things here and there. But Pluralsight, again, is about 90 to 95% of what I'm doing right now.
That's awesome. That's way cool, man. Well, I'm glad to be your colleague. I'm glad that you care so much about quality. I love, obviously creativity and curiosity are just part of who you are. It's your DNA. And I love that. I love that when I go to Pluralsight conferences, I get a chance to be around people that are like way smarter than I am.
Me too. I feel that way too.
And it's fun. It's fun. So
Absolutely.
Anyways, Dave, let me just pull up your Twitter, because you have a weird handle.
Yes.
It's David Tucker with an underscore on both sides. Is there a story to that?
Sides. Correct. Yes.
Do you just love underscores, or?
No, I went through a bunch of different, because see, here's the problem. Like I said, let me put my middle initial in there, and but my middle initial is A. I don't want people to think that my name is DeVita. I don't have anything against that, but I was just like, you know what? Let me just do underscore David Tucker underscore, and it really kills me, because I actually had an old one that was the name of my company before, and that was my main Twitter handle, and I was like, I really want it to be tied to my name, but at that point, there wasn't a lot of great options left.
Yeah. Well, at least you didn't have to do double underscores on both sides, I guess.
Very true. That would be even more confusing.
Hey, man, thanks so much for joining us. This has been really, really inspirational for me, and nice to have this conversation with you. And that's it. We'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.